The Arctic region has traditionally been a place of reduced human activity due to its harsh climate. The indigenous peoples have adapted their lifestyles over millennia to match the low temperatures, and blending with the environment, they don't harm it, while the modern world has not spread its influence in the same way it did to most other regions of the world. The Arctic's economic and strategic potential has literally stayed frozen, but now climate change is slowly changing things. Melting ice opens new trade routes and makes abundant resources economically viable. There are also downsides. The Arctic is one of the few places that has remained fairly untouched by human pollution and degradation of the environment. This might be about to change. Right now, trillions of dollars in goods flow between East Asia and Europe each year, and most of them take this route. But disruptions like Houthi attacks in the Bab el-Mandeb Strait often diverted the traffic on this much longer route. The Suez Canal also taxes each commercial ship that passes, raising the already high costs of transporting the goods. So instead, imagine this alternative. The Northern Sea Route is a path along Russia's Arctic coast that's up to 40% shorter, saving time and fuel. Historically, thick ice made it impassable for most of the year, but as warming widens the ice-free time window, the Northern Sea Route is becoming a game-changer for global trade. Beneath the Arctic's waters lies a treasure trove of natural resources, the most important being oil and gas. The studies offer just an estimate of how much oil and gas could be under the cold ocean, so the real figures might be different. But it is believed that around 13% of the world's oil, roughly 90 billion barrels, and 30% of the world's gas might be stored in the Arctic. Projects like Russia's Yamal LNG are already extracting this wealth. With ambitious plans for new facilities like the Arctic LNG-2 project, Russia aims to dramatically increase its Arctic gas output, potentially making the region a much larger contributor to its total gas exports in the future. Besides this, the Arctic holds also deposits of important minerals, rare earths among them, and growing fisheries due to the warmer waters. This has attracted a lot of interest from the countries that have shores at the Arctic and also from non-Arctic countries, like China. The Arctic has historically been a region of cooperation. During the Cold War, the US, Soviet Union, and other Arctic nations avoided direct confrontation, partly because the region's inaccessibility limited practical conflict. The 1987 Murmansk Initiative by Soviet leader Gorbachev also proposed the Arctic as a zone of peace, emphasizing cooperation on environmental and scientific issues. The Arctic Council, founded in 1996, played a crucial role in this collaborative effort by providing a forum for dialogue and cooperation among the 8 Arctic states, promoting sustainable development, environmental protection, and the involvement of indigenous communities. This situation slowly changed over the last years, as the climate change made clear that the northern part of the Earth has immense economic and strategic potential. Especially after the war in Ukraine started, the cooperation in the Arctic was replaced by competition. Simplifying things, we can say that there are 2 sides when it comes to the Arctic. The US-led side included Denmark as the owner of Greenland, Norway, Iceland, and Canada. On the other hand, there is Russia, which also invited its friend China to share its Arctic pie with. The borders in the Arctic are largely agreed upon, with some territorial disputes unsolved. For example, the Lomonosov Ridge is claimed by Russia, Canada, and Denmark. Russia has invested the most in the Arctic. Multiple times, Russian officials have made it clear that they consider the Arctic a region under the influence of Russia, and they backed their words by building icebreakers, giant ships that break the ice in the cold season and create passage for normal ships, and many port facilities at its northern shores. China calls itself a near-Arctic country and has taken advantage of Russia's isolation to the west to constantly grow its influence over Russia. China invested in the Yamal LNG project and is developing the Polar Silk Road, a part of the broader Belt and Road Initiative. The Russians are aware that the relation with China is becoming increasingly unequal, with China as the senior partner, but there is little they can do. Some US officials have become increasingly worried of the growing influence of Russia in the region coupled by China and started calling for increased attention to the Arctic. This concern has led NATO to boost its presence through military exercises, better intelligence gathering, and closer collaboration with Arctic allies to counter Russia's actions and protect its strategic interests. When looking at things from this perspective, Trump's idea of taking Greenland under US control makes sense. Greenland is beautifully located close to the North Pole, and acquiring it would put the US in a much better position to counter the influence of its adversaries. But all this new interest in the Arctic may have big downsides. Human activity is often done at the expense of the environment and all the animals living in it. The Arctic remains one of the largest untouched regions on Earth due to its vastness and harsh climate. While the US and Soviet Union engaged in strategic competition during the Cold War, including in the Arctic, this era also saw cooperation efforts in managing certain aspects of Arctic affairs. This, for example, involved restrictions on fishing to protect marine life and agreements on scientific research. If we are going to establish trade routes there and drill for oil in its seabed, we will certainly start polluting and degrading the place. Even small oil spills, which are not a rare occurrence, can devastate fragile ecosystems. The Exxon Valdez oil spill that occurred in Alaska in 1989 is the best example for how destructive a single accident can be. The long-term effects of such spills, including damage to wildlife populations, disruption of food webs, and contamination of coastal communities, can persist for decades. The remote location and extreme weather would complicate cleanup efforts and amplify the potential for catastrophic consequences from even minor spills. The sound of the ships passing by would disturb marine mammals reliant on sound for communication and navigation. The emissions would pollute the air and blacken the ice. The Arctic's importance extends beyond its intrinsic value. It plays a crucial role in global climate regulation. The white ice reflects the sun's rays back to the outer space. If the ice blackens because of all the pollution, it will absorb more heat and melt faster. If it's going to melt, instead of white ice, you get blue water, which again absorbs more heat. All of it would lead to a spiral that would exacerbate the warming process. This warming process would lead to the destruction of the indigenous communities. Their traditional way of life based on hunting, fishing, and cultural practices generally tied to the frozen landscape would die off, leading to displacement, food insecurity, and loss of cultural heritage. So, if not for the environment, we should at least think of protecting the Arctic for our own sake, because if not, the consequences of our own actions will hit us as a boomerang. The Arctic is melting into a new frontier of trade, resources, and power. But with great opportunity comes great risk to indigenous peoples, wildlife, and the global climate. Should the Arctic remain a shared sanctuary, or is a race for control inevitable? Share your thoughts below and subscribe for more videos.